Hello there, I'm Joe Cawthorn and welcome to this week's SportsChat podcast. Hello and welcome to this week's Rotherham Advertiser SportsChat podcast. Joining me around the table this week is news editor Michael Upton.
Hello.
Rotherham Advertiser editor Andrew Mosley.
Hello.
And Miller's correspondent and deputy sports editor Dave Beddows. Evening, gentlemen. Right, so first thing then to talk about is the disappointing weekend it has been for Rotherham Sport really this weekend, both across the Titans and the Millers. Disappointing for different reasons maybe, but we'll touch on that a little bit more later. First up, the Millers. Looking forward to begin with, big game at the weekend, Dave, against bottom club Blackpool at the New York Stadium. How big is this game for Rotherham?
Well, I think a big game has just got bigger, hasn't it? It was one of them fixtures I've been looking back over the last month or two and thinking it'd been an important one, considering how Blackpool have been struggling and Rotherham have been slipping. I mean, if Rotherham are looking for a golden chance to pull out of the bottom three, this is it, isn't it? And it's a chance to make a statement and get out of the way of harm for the time being. In a way, I think the pressure's more on Rotherham being the home team, and Blackpool are picking up a little bit. So, you know, they've got to show the mettle here, Rotherham, and deal with this and manage this game well.
Yeah, it's a fair point, isn't it? I mean, you say that the pressure could have been ramped up a little bit because of Saturday's events. Just in your opinion, what happened on Saturday? What went wrong? Because I know there's been a lot of Millers fans who haven't been too happy and things like that. What through your eyes, where did it go wrong for the Millers on Saturday?
I think in all areas, really. I think that the back line was shaky. Again, there was lack of dynamism and thrust in midfield. Created little in attack, and it was just flat-footed. It weren't like the Rotherham had been used to seeing. That hunger and desire, sort of the basics that Steve Evans again weren't there for me. Just the body language of the players. One or two just looked maybe a little bit sorry for themselves and defeated. And they need to shake themselves quickly. And
they were fairly lucky. They were only 1-0 in fairness, weren't they? I mean, Birmingham hit the woodwork twice in the first period, and there was other chances as well.
Yeah, could have been 2 down. Birmingham hit the post twice in the opening 20. So got out of jail there, really, Rotherham, but they never looked likely to take advantage of them 2 let-offs.
Michael, how important do you think then this game is that's coming up now? Is it a must-win, or is it too early in the season to say that?
Well, the ironic thing is that last week I thought these 2 games, Birmingham and Blackpool, were getting to the point where they must win, so they needed 3-4 points out of those. But actually, at the moment, I think the most important thing is to get on the score sheet again. I think even a 0-0 draw would be a bit of a disappointment because they're just not scoring. I mean, we said a few weeks ago there was a problem, a conundrum with the strikers, but with nobody scoring from anywhere, not even the midfielders chipping in, that's where it's really going to get worrying. I think a couple of goals against Blackpool, regardless of the result, would help a little bit, even if they lose.
I think at the start of the season a lot of people worried about a potential lack of creativity, and I think that's now showing itself. It's difficult to see where the next goal's coming from. Like Michael said, there's not many midfielders chipping in with goals like there was last season. The strikers aren't firing.
So how does Steve Evans sort this out? Is it a case of having to go and bring someone else in? Or is the tools there to work with? Is it just a case of tweaking the team that's already there a little bit?
He's brought a lot of players in already, hasn't he? So,
yeah.
It's just a case of, he always says, anyone I bring in will be better than what we already had, and I think that's not really proven to be the case at the moment. And I think they need a plan B as well, instead of just lumping the ball up to Alex Ravel. And if he doesn't win those headers, they're not going to score. And if he does win them, there's nobody there to feed off him.
For me, it starts and finishes in central midfield. The Middlesbrough game was a case in point. Even before the sending off, Middlesbrough had a stranglehold on central midfield. I don't quite know about if Steve knows what his preferred midfield 2 are. For whatever reason, the wingers aren't quite cutting it, but you need somebody to win it and somebody to pass it.
Well, on Saturday, a lot of people's star man this season, Paul Green, was left out, wasn't it? I think Steve touched on there were a slight injury, weren't feeling too well before the game.
Yeah.
But he has been the star man for a lot of people this season. Richie Smallwood came in to play alongside Frecklington. And like you said, Dave, there were no real running beyond the strikers or getting in and joining in, were they? They were both quite comfortable to just sit there and not really bust a gut, really, weren't they?
That's it. I mean, Smallwood was neat and tidy as he is. He got a foot in, he played it simple. Frecklington, we've not really seen the same from in this season, that attacking thrust that he had last. And again, we're outdone right in the middle of the park, so that's an area Steve will be looking at. When teams are winning, team selection's easy, isn't it? It's when they're losing that managers get dilemmas and so on, and that's what's happening at the moment.
I'd like to ask Dave, as the expert on this matter, does he need to take a risk? You said last week that Wordsworth hasn't been getting near the team. Against Bolton in September, he was arguably the best man in the midfield for Rotherham. He scored a goal, he could have scored another, he was popping up everywhere. But now he can't get near the team. Does he need to look at that midfield and say, let's take the game to the opposition? This guy's got a bit of flair, he's maybe a bit of a rough diamond, but give him a go.
It is, it's a bit of verve and inspiration and vision that we're needing. A bit of attacking thrust from the midfield rather than shoring it up.
So why doesn't he fancy Wordsworth?
Well, he's been out of the scene for a while, hasn't he? I think the longer it goes on, the more he's going to come into contention, surely.
I mean, personally, I think there's 2 points here. The first one is that Steve Evans has done it before, where he's brought a player in on loan or permanently. He's played for the first couple of months and then been shipped out somewhere else, either not being seen fit enough or good enough for the Millers team, or not forced himself in like maybe Steve had hoped so. So that could be one point, the fact that he's not pushed on how he'd hoped he would have. And the second point for me is that what Steve is doing at the moment is clearly not working at this moment in time. Therefore, for me, he needs to try something else. There's no saying that the grass will be greener on the other side, but at least he'll know what options he's got, and he could come up with something that maybe even he didn't think could work. But I think it's just taking that risk, Michael.
The funny thing about Saturday, just before we move on from that to wider things, it was almost a kind of freak goal that Donaldson scored. The fact that it was so a well constructed move, but to be clean through on goal and Colin made the save, and the ball to come back to him, to be able to control it, and then have the composure to put it in the corner. I mean, that was a very unusual goal, and maybe Rotherham just need one of those. You need the old cliche about going off someone's backside, or someone will score a worldie from somewhere. But they need to be progressive about going forward and not defend and say we need a clean sheet.
Looks like the confidence has gone, doesn't it? And they need to start scoring a couple of goals, like Michael said earlier.
Yeah.
It's fine margins, isn't it? Because there's a big penalty claim on Ravel. At one end, they sweep down on downfield and score.
I mean, as well, it's not as if... I mean, Steve, did he call his defending disgraceful after the game? I mean, they're not. It's not as if they've conceded 5 goals here, is it? It's not as if they've been absolutely torn apart at the back. They've lost by 1 goal. It's not.
It's the other end. The problem's at the other end. You need to outscore the opposition.
So do you think maybe Steve's just trying to deflect some of that away from the strikers and put it onto his defenders who have been solid for the majority of the season? Do you think he's maybe just trying to even it out across the team, the brunt of this bad spell at the minute?
And they've only conceded once in the last 2 games, a clean sheet at Hillsborough as well, but the pressure's on the team aren't playing, the pressure's on the back 4.
Right, we'll leave the Millers there then for this week, and we'll move on to some wider topics in the footballing community. And one thing that has come up yet again, it's reared its ugly head, is simulation in football. Now, the reason that I personally believe that this has come up as a big issue again is because of the players involved. Number 1 was Ross Barkley at Everton, who did a dive that Tom Daly would be happy of, even though there was no contact at all, not even a brush. The second was James Tompkins at West Ham, who brought back memories of Rivaldo in the World Cup when he was pushed in the chest and went down clutching his face. And then the third and final one was on Sunday when Jan Vertonghen was flicked at by Gaston Ramirez on the floor, and he went down like he had been shot by a sniper on top of the roof. So these things are coming back, and in one weekend we've had 3 really blatant examples of it. Michael, why do you think this is happening? What's going off?
Well, the one at Goodison was a strange one. I mean, the Barkley incident is totally out of character. He's never seemed to be one to go for that sort of thing. There's no way I could even explain away that kind of incident. But I think that Martinez would probably be quite upset with that. The Tompkins one, though, is the one for me that is just striking. This is supposed to be a big, hard centre half. I know he's got nice hair, but big, hard centre half to go down.
I think for comedy value.
Face, and try and get an opponent sent off like that. I think it's absolutely disgraceful.
Is there any other word to describe that other than cheating?
No, it's definitely cheating. And this is why I'd like to see, we have a dubious goals panel, we have a disciplinary panel, looking at rescinding cards after the weekend. Why can't they have a panel that looks at sport and behaviour and after that game says James Tompkins, he got booked for being involved in the melee, but for unsport behaviour gets another yellow card and a booking. It's the whole thing like grappling in the penalty area. If you give it half a dozen times, half a dozen yellow cards or extra red cards in a couple of weeks, soon cuts it out.
It's a good point. I mean, Andrew, is it not punishment enough for the players, especially Tompkins? How embarrassed he must be.
Yeah, that's exactly the word.
You know what I mean? That's
the word I was just going to use as well as cheating. It's embarrassing, and it's embarrassing for football.
It's embarrassing for the club, for the player, for the manager, and probably for his teammates as well, isn't it? I mean, let's be honest. No one playing five-a-side on a Wednesday night won't see the teammates going down.
We don't know if anyone at West Ham will have a word with him about it. As far as they're concerned, if he goes down and he gets Morales sent off and they win the game, they'll get patted on the back.
Well, Michael, that leads us perfectly to the question that I want to put to the panel today. If a Rotherham player was in the penalty area and he went down under no contact, a blatant dive, won a penalty, 3 points for the Millers, and hypothetically it kept him in the Championship for next season, would he be hailed as a hero or a villain by Millers fans? What do we think? Dave?
I don't think supporters care so long as there's a win at the end of it. There's a distinct lack of honesty in the game, isn't there? And it's getting worse.
And that's from the top with everything we've seen at FIFA recently, isn't it?
People will say players for other clubs do it, so why shouldn't we? And unfortunately that attitude is spreading, which I think is why you're seeing an increase in
it's this sort of tit-for-tat behaviour, isn't it?
I think players and fans are kind of equally expedient here. I think they will probably prefer to say the guy who scores the penalty is the hero, and they'll try and forget about the guy who took a dive. I also think pushes in the box or lack of, it's a slightly different issue from pretending you've been hit in the face.
Yeah, it is. There's different forms of simulation.
The thing as well, trying to get someone sent off by pretending you're injured, and at the same time doing all these public photo ops where look how great I am and look how stylish I am and all the rest of it. Like I'm a big man in this respect, and they act like someone who's blown on them and they've been shot.
And it's a fair point.
That's what he's like away from football. When he walks into a door or stubs his toe or something, he must be in pain all the time.
Exactly.
If that's,
and it's a fair point to say that a lot of people who are fans of rugby say what would happen if these footballers were playing a game of rugby, which takes us nicely onto the Titans. So Rotherham Titans then this weekend playing top of the league unbeaten Bristol away from home, and give a really good account of themselves, didn't they, Andrew?
Yeah, I think Andy Robinson, Bristol coach, has got a really good record of winding people up before games, and I think it fired Rotherham up as it did in the playoffs last season. Because I think before the game they said there was no reason why Bristol shouldn't go through the full season without losing a game. Yet they very really nearly did yesterday. Rotherham only came away without a losing bonus point because of a last-minute try, and there was a controversial try reversal decision in the middle of the second half where Rotherham would have actually gone ahead.
That was quite pivotal in the game, wasn't it?
It was. Well, Bristol restarted, went down the other end and scored a try.
So the momentum had switched.
Yeah.
But Rotherham were up at half-time, weren't they? So in that first period, they'd really give a good account of themselves, Lee Blackett's men.
And they're still in fourth, despite all the reservations at the start of the season. There seems to be a little group of teams, 5 with Nottingham in 5th, who've pulled away from the rest of the crowd already. So there's a good shout for them making the playoffs again this season if they carry on this sort of form.
Even though it was a defeat at the end of the day, plenty of things to be positive from there for Lee Blackett and the team, definitely.
Well, they aren't going to play anybody else as good as Bristol, are they? And
they're
losing by less than 10 points. And I should think that should send them into other games with a good deal of confidence.
Over their financial strength, apart from, say, Worcester.
Yeah.
As well, so a real good benchmark, yeah.
And beaten Leeds Carnegie as well.
Dave's fond of the word yardstick. I don't think there's a better yardstick in this league than Bristol, and Rotherham proved they were up to running very close. Just touching on the feign injury thing, I think if you did that on a rugby field, you'd probably be a bit concerned about the next tackle you went in for, because it might be a little bit on the hard side. That's the difference between football. It's becoming more of a non-contact sport. Whereas rugby is how football used to be. It's people getting stuck in it. It's physical. And you don't want physicality in an unfair way.
No, it's physical but fair.
But in both sports, you want physical but within the rules. And the irony in football is that you're going away from physical contact and actually people breaking the rules by trying to get benefits without physical contact.
Yeah.
It's not wrestling at corners. It's people not touching each other.
Yeah.
But just to finish off with the Titans, there's no reason to think they can't stay top 4 and keep pushing for the playoffs again this season. They seem to be punching at least at that weight, if not slightly above it.
And I think just to bring it full circle finally, I mean, you mentioned about Titans, they're still in top 4. And even for the Millers, you know, win this weekend, you've suddenly risen 2 or 3 places, and the mood around the place is totally different. To get 3 points come 5 o'clock on Saturday.
That's it. I mean, heading into this busy period of time now for both teams, Titans and the Millers, this is the start of the time of the season where we see what they're made of and see what the rest of the season is going to hold.
I have to say, I think with the Millers, one thing that they have got going for them that other clubs might not have is they've got a very good loyal home support, big crowds still turning out despite what's been a bit of a slump in form because of the novelty of the championship. So if the crowds keep turning out and making a bit of noise, maybe inspiring the team, that could push towards a win or two. And then, as you say, it's a Merry Christmas to look forward to.
Right, that's all for today then, gentlemen. Thank you, Michael, Andrew and David, for joining me around the table for the discussions. If you'd like to have your say on anything that we've spoke about, including the question that I put to the panel about the Rotherham player taking a dive and getting 3 points, you can do by tweeting us at Advertiser Sport. And if you've got anything you'd like us to discuss for next week's podcast, feel free to tweet on there as well. Thank you for listening.